Oh, there we go. We're live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Book Club. This week we did the book Lolita. Um, so I'm going to do what I usually do. I'm going to read off a quote from actually the foreword of the book, just a small part, and then we're going to get into the plot and start talking about everything. And hopefully we'll stay on track and not get distracted too much from recent Milo Yiannopoulos related events. So here's the quote. As a case history, Lolita will become, no doubt, a classic in psychiatric circles. As a work of art, it transcends its expiatory aspects, and still more important than scientific significance and literary worth. Its ethical impact the book should have on the reader is most poignant. Sorry, I'm having a hard time reading this. Personal study that lurks a general lesson, a wayward child, an egotistical mother, and a painting maniac. There are not only vivid characters in a unique story, they warn us of the dangerous trends. They point out to the evils. Lolita should make all of us, parents, social workers, educators, apply ourselves with greater vigilance and vision to the task of bringing up a better generation in a safer world. So before we start, what did you guys, for I guess those who have read it, what did you guys think?
Hello. Hey, wait. Are we actually live? Because
Yes.
I am on two. I am on two different.
No, we're
Oh,
live.
okay. We are. Okay, sorry.
So, Lady
I just got
Bastard,
confused.
since we both of us finished the book, what did you think?
Well, I really loved it actually.
I
It
loved it
was
too.
very disturbing. It was disturbing as hell, especially for me. But you know, it had that contrast, as mentioned in the foreword, between the brilliance of the author and the words and everything, and the horrific subject and the detail and everything. And so that contrast is what hooks you, I think.
And I think that the idea is that it's supposed to be something that makes you uncomfortable. And I kind of draw similarities between this book and A Clockwork Orange, where in that book it's also these despicable characters doing awful things, but because of the way that the story is written and that you're seeing it from their perspective, you're almost a little bit on their side. And I don't think this is the case with Lolita because well, his character progression becomes interesting, but definitely in the beginning of the book, he's not a very likable person at all. Um,
Oh no,
so
he is not.
okay, so let's start talking about the plot. So he starts the book where he lists the names of like different names of his love. So her Lolita's actual name is Dolores, but she goes by Lo, Dolly, and then his secret nickname for her is Lolita. Um, uh, and so he also says that Lolita was not the first girl child in his life, and he refers to a particular girl he calls Exhibit Number One, which is this girl Annabelle, and this goes to his first actual sexual encounter. So he begins the story from his birthplace in his childhood in Riviera. His mother had died suddenly, which he kind of describes as a traumatic event. And his father runs like this luxurious hotel, and HH lives a happy, healthy life among like Riviera tourists, people who are coming in. Um, and then in the summer of 1923, he meets a girl named Annabelle Lee who is traveling with her parents. And so at first they're friends, but then they soon develop this passionate adolescent love. And so he also kind of says that like he doesn't have this picture of Annabelle the way he does of Lolita now, but you can tell that his interest in Lolita is rooted from his encounter with Annabelle. So they have these like awkward attempts at sex and trying to be together, but they never manage to actually be together. And then Annabelle dies 4 months later of some sort of illness.
From consumption, I
And
think.
pardon?
Consumption, I think it was.
What's consumption?
Uh, Tuberculosis.
Oh.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was back in the day where people died of like getting sick from like getting the cold or something. Um, and so he right in the beginning of the book he draws connections between Annabelle and Lolita and how they're somehow connected, and the fact that he doesn't really get to consummate or like have, you know, his love with Annabelle is kind of maybe what is supposed to trigger his predilection and being stuck at that age for some reason. And so whenever you guys want to talk about something, you can join in. But I'm just going through the plot of the book. Sorry, where did it go? So he goes back, he discusses his college days. And while he's doing that, he has his definition of what he's attracted to, or the particular type of girl that he's attracted to, and he calls them nymphant,
Nymphet.
nymphite. Yeah.
Nymphet.
So according to him, these are a girl between the ages of 9 and 14. They're not necessarily beautiful or attractive, but they have this elusive, sexually appealing quality. And he attributes this quality to like a magic spell. And he starts actually referencing historical and cultural instances between romances and marriages between underage girl and older men in history. And he states like the allure of nymphids can only be understood by adult men who are at least 30 years old, and who have the wisdom to understand a girl's enchanting qualities. Which actually leads me to the first question. So there are a lot of stories and cases in history of child marriages. And I was just wondering, like, when as a society was there that shift that we decided that was wrong?
Probably when Christianity came on the scene.
Loki?
I think right around the time we started figuring out what the hell psychology is.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't think it's
sounds likely.
like, there's still parts of the world that are fully okay with all kinds of sex all the time. I actually don't know. I might actually take a few minutes to actually look into this.
Yeah, because that was something that I was actually thinking about.
Well, hold on. I do want to bring up the fact that like we live in Ontario, where the legal age of consent is 14.
Yeah, but there's still a limitation of at the age of 14, it's still someone within like a 2-year age range. Like, you
but
can't be
within
14 and have
16,
sex
you're
until 30.
already allowed to marry and go on your merry way with the
I
approval
don't
of the
think
parents.
so.
Yeah,
you need parental approval. Yeah.
Yes, with the approval of the parents. So 14, you can start having sex as long as you don't get caught, and then by 16, you're allowed to get married and move on your merry way. And I've seen it pushed back several times. Now it started off at 16, then went down to 15, then went down to 14. Last I heard, the people are pushing it to go even further back to 13, because apparently grade school is the preschool. What's the pre high school thing called? Grade school?
Yeah.
Yeah, so because
Elementary
apparently kids
school?
are starting to have sex in grade school, and that's when they're starting to teach them how to have sex as well. So it's the chicken or the egg situation, whether they're teaching them that they can have sex at a younger age, and therefore they're having sex at a younger age, or they're having sex at a younger age, so they have to teach them to have sex at a younger age. But every time they teach them to have sex, they have to push the age of consent down to the area where they're teaching them to have sex. So now it's 14. In a few years, it'll be 13, and the number will get lower and lower. But yeah, I want to find out exactly where that's happening.
And I think this kind of also touches on like the distinction a little bit that Milo was in the quote. I know the quote where he's getting in trouble for, where he was differentiating between like pedophile of children, like really young children, ages like 6, 7 kind of thing, and then like ones who have actually gone through some form of puberty, and how that could be a little bit different. So there is this distinction there, that it's very specific to a certain girl at certain ages, which again is related to his experience with this Annabelle girl, at the age of which his relationship with her was. And then interestingly enough, though, he doesn't actually act on any of, like, he watches girls, but in the beginning of the book, he's never actually acted on any of it. He just kind of like enjoys fantasizing about it.
But mainly because he didn't get close to any of them. He didn't know any, young girls.
Yeah, well, I guess it could be for lack of opportunity as well. But I do think that there is this element of where he enjoys the fantasy more than the actual act to a certain extent, at least in the beginning of the book. Where it's like, yeah, it's the idea of her, not the reality. So it also the book so he is apparently an attractive man, and he gets a lot of adult female attention, and he has a really big disdain for like adult women. He really doesn't like them
Especially
at
college
all.
girls.
Yeah, which is, I mean, I don't understand how you could tolerate hanging out with like a 13-year-old girl because they're probably so annoying, but he
Because
can,
no, let me tell you why. Because it's simpler. Because they care about specific, very girly, simple things. They're not going on and on about their future career and a lot of
yeah,
other
that's
bullshit.
actually, yeah. And when we get into Charlotte's character, Lolita's mom, his criticisms of her are almost of like the fact that you have to like play this role and you're all keeping up appearances. Like the adult world is just a game, like it's an illusion. It's everyone just pretending to be something, which is exactly what he is. He's constantly lying and pretending to be something else and keeping up appearances and a facade. But then he's so critical of adult women for that very reason. That they do this, that they keep up with appearances so much, and that they only care about like, the aesthetic things. So he really, yeah, has a big disdain for adult girls, and sorry, for adult women, and we'll get into he has 2 marriages, so we'll get into that. Um, guys, any thoughts yet?
Well, I only had one thought, but I'm not sure if you're there yet. Go on, just go on. I'll talk about it
Okay.
eventually.
Okay.
Either way, I think he was a disgusting man. He got what he deserved.
The only good thing he did.
Okay, so there's a point in the book in the earlier chapters where he actually like wonders what happens to these nymphets as they get older. Like this is something that just doesn't cross his mind. He's so stuck on the idea of what age they're in that he doesn't even think about it. And so finally this thought occurs to him of like what happens to them when they stop being nymphets. And so he describes this affair he has with a young prostitute. And when she matures out of her infant phase, he like she like he I don't know, like
He dumped her like a fucking bag of potatoes.
pretty much. And so he tries to, so she actually like he's not interested in her anymore, and this prostitute actually becomes angry that he's not interested in her anymore, and he takes her upstairs and pays her, but he doesn't actually sleep with her. Like his sexual interest in her is gone. And so in efforts to like hide his desires, he decides to get married, and he marries like this girl named Valeria. And like which he also says that it's really easy for him to get married because he's so good looking, he could just get any kind of girl that he wants. He's in the earlier book, like I sometimes wonder whether he's more of a sociopath than a pedophile. Yeah. Because just mostly concerned with like no empathy for what other people could be thinking.
Yeah.
And so he chooses this Valeria girl because she's very childlike, she's flirtatious, she has like this doll look about her, and she falls in love with her.
He falls in love with her. No, yeah, she
falls
in love with him.
Sorry, you're right. Yes. But then she finds so although he's initially attracted to her, like her girlish personality, he finds her intellectually inferior. So he's also an educator and a scholar. That's something we should point out. And like a writer as well. And so I actually find it interesting that he's so judgmental of her for being inferior and dumb and not smart, but then enjoys hanging out with 13-year-old girls. So
Well, why do you think he feels like he's so smart and intellectual? When you only hang out with 13, 14-year-olds, I also feel like I'm a genius.
No, but then he like judges adults for being like dumb and like
There's also
unintelligent.
I think that Nabokov here did quite a, an accurate assessment when he portrays pedophiles as these successful creative people, because we know what the story is from Hollywood and whatnot, where apparently these things are not uncommon. So I think he chose that on purpose to make him creative and smart and whatever.
Okay.
He's a narcissist. It's all about him.
That too.
His pleasure.
That too.
Yeah, but
his pleasures, his enjoyments, his fulfillment.
But it just doesn't explain why he judges adults all the time for being like intellectually inferior, but then doesn't. But at the same time, like kids who are intellectually inferior. I don't know. I think it's also like that maybe they don't have an excuse anymore. Like they should be.
He's part of academia. When you become part of academia, yeah, exactly. They become elitists and everything else. So there's already a level where they think they're better than everyone else.
And there's another thing. Like he can't think when he's around these girls. Like he doesn't think.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, all he's thinking, he's fantasizing. He's not like thinking about what the topic of conversation is.
Exactly.
For sure.
He's not interested in them for conversation. That's why.
That's okay. That's actually a good point. Okay, so he rarely engages in like sexual acts with her. And then so after sometimes he has an uncle in America who dies and leaves him. He's in Paris at this time. Leaves him an inheritance. And so he wants to, with his wife, move to America. And so she's actually a little bit reluctant to leave. And he's trying to convince her that she's going to enjoy America, and she confesses that she's been having an affair with a taxi driver. And so despite him actually like not giving a shit about her, he actually really feels betrayed. And this is the first time in the book where he contemplates murder, just like casually contemplates murder. It's just a solution to the problem. Kind of thing.
Who doesn't contemplate murder on a regular basis to solve problems? It's literally the easiest and most effective solution to any problem.
And apparently he did kill her after all, so.
No.
Yes, it says in the book.
No.
It says in the book that how he killed her. But he was stupid and inept at the time. He didn't know what he was doing.
Valeria?
Yeah.
His first wife? No, he doesn't kill her. Yeah. She gets away. So the taxi driver comes.
Well, he's talking about, I forget what he was talking about, something.
And he mentions that he's planning to kill her. No, he didn't.
He said
No, he did not.
No, he did. That says in the book later on. He did.
No, it says later in the book that she died. That she and the former, taxi driver / Russian officer died in America.
I misread it. I misread it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
So
continue.
He's describing how he's going to kill her and what he's going to do. I think he does kill people.
In the book, it says that he killed her. That's all I know.
I think you're. Yeah, maybe they're referring to a different her.
I don't know. Either way, continue, please.
Okay. So he's contemplating killing her, but then he doesn't get a moment alone with her because the taxi driver comes, and he's really actually apologetic. And he just like they grab her stuff and like the two of them run away. And so he can't get away with killing her. And then he later finds out that she died in childbirth. And that her and her husband moved to California to participate in some bizarre psychological experiment. And so at this point, we also find, well, I guess like we kind of knew that. So he's telling this story from prison. So we know that he's in prison. We don't know what for. And there's a lot of one of the reasons this book was very well written because it uses so many literary devices like foreshadowing. They introduce certain key characters and we'll get into the story of certain numbers that keep coming up.
The use of metaphor is extraordinary. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, the use of metaphor, a lot of foreshadowing. So even the books that he's reading or holding on to in prison allude to things to characters that come up later in the story. So after so Valeria leaves him, sorry. He decides to go to America, and he goes to New York, and he takes a job transcribing French literature and writing perfume ads. And he spends his time watching nymphs in Central Park. And so what did you say? That's gross.
I said that sounds gross as fuck.
Yeah.
Like gross
Um,
as fuck.
Because it is.
And he has a breakdown because of the stress of his job. And so in the book,
Poor
he just
baby.
like so it's funny though, because he just like kind of like he so casually says it, like he just has this breakdown, like this is something that happens. And this is not the first time in the book that he does that, so you clearly see that this is not someone who's like mentally well, that
Oh
he's
yes,
having
yeah, he had breakdowns. Yeah, that's what I mentioned.
yeah, but he just so casually alludes to them, like just as a passing kind of thing that happened. And so he has these breakdowns. He goes into, he gets better. He takes a job in a trip to the Arctic, studying psychology with his teammates. Um, it improves his health, but he finds the project tedious. And he actually publishes a phony analysis of a psychological issue that he was supposed to be studying. So there's actually a little bit of criticism of the study of psychology. And so he has another breakdown at this point in the Arctic, and he gets institutionalized once again. So now we see that he's actually been institutionalized before. Um, and while he actually spends,
Wait a second. Hold on. Okay, you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was just thinking about this whole nymphet thing, and then this actually puts it into full perspective. So he's been institutionalized many times before. He is a psychiatrist apparently, who writes papers on this shit, and he catches himself. Like he literally sits down and writes, "I go to the park to watch nymphins. What the fuck is the proper term?
Nymphites.
Nymphites?
Nymphites.
I don't know.
Like if I ever catch
Nymphites.
myself sitting down writing a diary and going, well, today I'm gonna go to the park. I'm gonna sit around. I'm gonna watch all these nymphites, and hopefully I won't get institutionalized again for this kind of behavior. And considering he is a psychiatrist,
He's not a psychiatrist.
he's some kind of research.
Well, yeah,
person
he's an
who does
academic.
psychology.
I guess everybody back in the day studied everything, kind of thing.
Keep making excuses for academia. But you would think with even like a modicum of some kind of critical thought or psychological understanding that you might have a real problem. I don't know if I catch myself writing a diary about how I fucking love watching anything.
Well, he
like
clearly
no, hold on.
justifies
I mean,
it,
like
though.
if I write a diary entry continuously over and over again about how I sit around and watch fucking birds in the park, I might find something wrong with myself. Maybe it's like maybe I have a bit too much of an obsession with these blue jays hanging out.
Well, he's too
Maybe
busy.
if I start feeling feelings in my crotch when I look at blue jays, I might be like, maybe there's a bit something wrong here.
Well,
I
just he's too busy playing the victim.
Very true.
And
he likes to differentiate himself from other pedophiles as well. Like he's different. Like he's a special type. He understands things to a different level. And a character that later comes up in the book contrasts like his version of what type of pedophile he is, and then like the bad version of a pedophile kind of thing. So he does differentiate himself in that way. And interestingly enough, when he's institutionalized, one of the things that he likes to do, and he actually stays into the mental hospital, is messing with the psychiatrist, and he keeps giving them fictional symptoms, and enjoys confusing them and them trying to like be all intellectual and figure out.
Does anyone else feel like he's incredibly delusional? Like all of this might be a dream.
Yeah.
Also, it proves that he is part of academia, and this is how they act around so-called normal people.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, like he's like mocking them almost, that they can't figure out what's actually wrong with him, right? And so he stays there for a few months, and then he finally checks himself out and goes back into the world.
What did he check himself in for?
Having a nervous breakdown.
Okay, so he's giving doctors fake symptoms about being voluntarily in the hospital. He's not
Pretty
doing
much.
anything.
No,
He's
he
no,
just
no, 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 no. That is officially that's an official sign of him not doing anything. He checked himself in because he's having a nervous breakdown, but he's giving doctors some kind of weird fucking symptoms. But he's there voluntarily, so no one's even keeping him there. He does seem like a giant attention whore.
He is. He's a narcissist, big time.
He's a
100%
huge
Yeah.
narcissist.
and so he
So
goes through like periods of like rage and anger.
I wasn't done my thought. I also feel like he's kind of attracted to girls, to little nymphets, as he calls them, nymphites, because he's a narcissist and he wants the attention. Why else would he be writing this book?
Well, he describes himself as a
No,
madman numerous
he
times.
goes
Like,
through a dynamic sort of thing, and he changes in the end. So the writing
No,
of the
asshole.
book,
He still got what he deserved.
the thing he did at the end of the book was
Oh,
the best thing
by the
he
way,
could have ever done.
By the way, if anyone hasn't realized, I hated this fucking book. But anyway, that was just my opinion. The girls loved it. That's all that counts now.
No,
It's just
you're
really weird that the women love this book. Just a
Okay,
romanticization of an older man being with a younger girl.
no,
No,
it's
it was
a good
far too
book.
late for that. God damn it.
That's okay.
It was like
It's a
when I
good-
read this, it was like watching a train wreck, but I couldn't look away. That's what it felt like.
It's
To me.
exactly. It's a very tragic story and all like it's not just about him. It's about the other characters involved too. Like,
Siggy, you could talk then.
pardon?
What?
Am I cutting out?
You could talk. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
I can hear you.
I can hear you
Okay.
fine.
Yes.
Yeah, I can.
Maybe
What
Lady
Loki
does.
said. Yeah, what Loki said.
It's
Because I'm a
like
fanboy of Loki.
every character is so
There are
tragic
characters.
in this book. Like, it's not even just him. So
Oh yeah.
he gets out of the institution and he heads to a small town to stay at like with this character called Mr. McCoo. And McCoo is supposed to have this 12-year-old daughter who he fantasizes about. But then when he arrives there, he learns that the house has actually been burnt down. And so Mr. McCoo recommends him to go to a boarding house at 342 Lawn Street. And so that number also keeps coming up in the book, which is run by a widowed Mrs. Hayes. So he goes there and he's really not impressed with the house, and he thinks that she's very conventional, even though she tries to be like cultured and involve herself in communities, and thinks that she's really
Yeah,
pretentious.
she wants a friend.
Right. And so he's about to say like he has no interest, and he finds the house unappalling until he realizes that she has a 12-year-old daughter, Dolores, and he sees her sitting on the lawn. And so right at this moment he becomes obsessed with her. And so like this is also a story of obsession and loss of control of that obsession.
Yeah, and one thing I really took note in that when I was reading that, I think that he even literally said that he reincarnated, the Annabelle girl into Lolita.
Yeah.
He even mentioned something about some sort of birthmark or whatever.
Yeah,
So that
and
was
yeah,
interesting.
Up to this point, though, has been looking for a replacement for that girl that he almost had the chance with, but didn't because a couple old guys said, "Go boy, go."
Pretty much.
Cave. So ever since that point, when he got interrupted with his sexual conquest, he's been looking for that girl again and through the other ones until he found her in Lolita.
But up until this point, like he looks at girls, but then becomes uninterested in them after they stop being nymphites, right? Like but with her and her resemblance to Annabelle, and he immediately brings that up right away as soon as he sees her. It turns into like even a different level. Like he becomes consumed and obsessed with her beyond his own control.
I think he was caught. He's still caught in that situation in the beginning of the book.
Pretty
That's
much.
what I feel like. That he never moved on, and he's always in that He's always in that part of history, in his personal history.
Also, this is coming from him and his perspective, and clearly he's not very insightful of himself and his own case. So we actually don't know what the reasoning is. Like maybe there could have been all of these other incidences in his childhood and the death of his mother and all of these things. We don't know who was coming in and out of that hotel. Maybe his dad was running a fucking brothel. Like we don't know because we're only hearing it from his version of this like glorified story. And we don't know the dark and dirty details of his specific experience. Until
But it just
later
seems
on.
like in his mind, though, that one incident is what he can't get past.
Yeah, pretty much. And yeah, so his obsession with Lolita is very, very connected to Annabelle. Um so so as he describes Lolita, they're very like romanticized kind of descriptions of her. All these attempts of him to try to like lure her into, so he starts living with this family in a way. And he stays, and he's delighted to find out that he actually resembles a celebrity that Lolita adores. And so this kind of causes Lolita's mother, Charlotte, to tease Lolita about having a crush on him. And so he's also been keeping this journal of his attraction and descriptions of Lolita. And he knows that it's wrong, but he really can't help himself. And he goes into Lolita's room and he touches her things and stuff, but like he doesn't really act on anything. He just fantasizes and watches her and stalks her and thinks about ways to try to get close to her and be around
Basically,
her.
he's grooming her. Basically.
Yeah, I guess.
What I've realized. He said that the journal was destroyed long ago, and as he's doing this deposition here to the cops, he was able to pinpoint and translate exactly photocopy memory from what that journal was.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
And he actually regrets later in the book. He really regrets destroying the journals because that's like all he had. And so this is also the interesting character of Lolita's mother, who clearly starts. Yeah, so she clearly starts having feelings for HH right away. But he really doesn't like her originally, and he specifically hates her because she's always complaining about Lolita. And he also describes Lolita. So Lolita is really outspoken. She's very vulgar. She swears a lot. She's not actually like a good girl. Like she gets into trouble a lot. And her relationship with her mother is not good. Her mother is completely putting her down all the time, complaining about her, trying to get away from her, all the time. Like just and you can also kind of see a little bit of like a triangle coming where like the mom is kind of even a little bit like jealous of her own daughter, to that extent, because she is young and she's free and whatever. But like Lolita's not like, she's a very like vulgar girl. Like she's very aggressive. She speaks her mind. She doesn't act like a nice girl. And she's always complaining about it. And this is one of the reasons that he doesn't really like Charlotte. And so he decides, even in the beginning, he starts just daydreaming about killing Charlotte. So again, just like eliminate obstacle kind of thing.
Yeah, he calls her the Haze Woman.
Yeah, and like just yeah.
You know what? I think I have seen the movie before.
Maybe you have.
Sorry.
You might have seen this movie. Like this probably is a very recycled story. I wouldn't be surprised if it has been kind of seeped into other stories, like soap operas and shit.
You are against your will, just like I am. We're here against our wills.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I have seen the movie. I vaguely remember, and I vaguely remember having this thought that, like, why did he even marry this woman if he wants to just murder her?
What year did the movie come out? Anyone know? What year did the movie come out?
There's a Stanley Kubrick version of the movie, and that came out in like the 50s, and then there was another version, a 97 version of the movie, which is actually more accurate to the book. And that came out in 97, and I was just actually watching it, and I think it's really well done. And the girl who
Yeah,
plays
it seems like it was following the book pretty well.
yeah, and
I
the girl
saw
who
that.
plays Lolita does a wonderful job. Like she plays the character so well, and even the guy who plays HH, like it was yeah. So if you guys don't want to read the book, you should watch the '97 movie. We might actually watch the Stanley Kubrick version of it too at some point and discuss that. One of the ideas we actually had last night was doing some book club streams about books versus the movie versions, and we would kind of like talk about which one was better and why of different books. So, anyways, that's sidetracking, but that's something that might come up in book club. We'll do the book versus movie fights.
Well, there you go then. An update, folks.
Yeah.
Book is better. That's all I'm saying.
So sorry, go ahead.
I keep forgetting that I'm muting myself. So what are we doing? Are we starting the movie club as well, and then we're gonna do movie club versus book club once in a while, where we just fight?
No, I don't know if of a
I
movie
love
club.
that. Yes.
I just want to.
You know what? I'll start the movie club. Anyone who wants to join movie club is fantastic.
All
I'll
right,
leave
Loki,
it in the
I'm in.
description.
I'm following Loki.
It's the lazy way to do it, but we'll just get together. We'll just watch a movie, and then we'll talk about the movie on the live stream. That'll be
Cool.
perfect.
I think the journal that he wrote was a part of himself, a different character of him
Yeah,
compared to the rest of his life that he's done. But when he meets Lolita, like you said, there was a transformation, and that journal represented his transformation.
pretty much. And I actually do. Since you didn't finish the book, Merlin, I'm looking forward to telling you how it actually ends and in his character
Yeah.
progression and seeing what you think of that. So there's this moment in the book, and this is kind of like a pivotal moment where he's sitting with Lolita on the couch, and this is like a scene in the movie as well. And Lolita's so
Oh, gosh.
so this is like the pivotal okay.
Yeah.
So Lolita starts to eat this
Yeah.
apple, and he starts like play fighting with her, and he's like teasing her. He takes the apple away, and so she's trying to fight back, and she's singing a song, and so she starts like fighting him to get the apple back, and he's rubbing against him. She's rubbing against him, and so he kind of like climaxes while she's kind of there. But the phone rings, and she goes to pick up the phone, and she doesn't notice anything at this point. Although we don't know that. According to him, she doesn't notice anything, but we never get
You know, I was
Lolita's
thinking
perspective
though,
of events.
if he had a hard on and he was rubbing up against her legs, she would have felt something.
Yeah,
Not necessarily. She was 13.
He was basically wearing
yeah.
his pajamas and
Not
I-
necessarily. I'm telling you, not necessarily. She was 13.
No, necessarily. I'm going to put it out there right now.
So yeah, and well, I mean, considering her behaviors later in the book, I don't know.
I just wanted to point out that the symbol of apple returns constantly, and it definitely
The forbidden fruit.
Yeah, and she has like a dress patterned like an apple. So
I didn't notice
with this
that.
scene,
yeah, that's why it's such a well-written book.
Yes.
with this scene, I had to get up and walk away. I almost broke the book right there with this scene.
This was a pretty So this was a pretty hard scene to get through. But I didn't notice that apple thing. That actually even adds another layer to it, like the idea of this forbidden fruit. So at this point he's like proud of himself that he's managing to satisfy himself without actually corrupting the child. And he wavers between this idea of wanting to repeat the experience, but also wanting to preserve Lolita's purity and childlikeness. And it's really interesting that he keeps referencing the fact that she's a child, like every 5 minutes, child, pre-adolescent, like he emphasizes this about her constantly and refers to her as that. And so he kind of is dealing with this. And so later Charlotte tells him that she's sending Lolita away to summer camp for 3 weeks. And he is miserable and depressed, and he pretends to have a toothache to hide these feelings. And they actually suggest him to go see their neighbor, Dr. Quilty, which is a dentist and the uncle of a playwright. So this Quilty character actually becomes a significant character later in the book. But here is again another foreshadowing to someone who ultimately is spoiler alert, ultimately the one who takes Lolita away from him. So he considers leaving the boarding house until Lolita returns. And Lolita originally doesn't want to go to camp. She's angry, and Charlotte doesn't care, just wants to get rid of her daughter. And he worries that she's gonna lose her purity while she's away and cease to be an infant.
Without him, right? She
Yeah.
loses her purity without him. As much as he was worried about
Exactly.
preserving her purity, it's still
Yeah.
for him
Yeah.
to take.
Yeah. So he
Exactly.
has these moments of preserving her. Yeah. So she's actually and the thing is Charlotte, so she clearly has a crush on HH and the resemblance to this celebrity that she likes and stuff. And she's clearly competitive with her, or her mom is clearly competitive with her. And in fact, her mom tells her that HH was the one who convinces Charlotte to send her to camp, and he thinks that it was a great idea. And so she actually becomes angry with HH that he's trying to send her away and stuff. But right before she goes right before she enters the car to go to camp, she runs upstairs, and this is actually a really well done scene in the movie, in the 97 movie, where she runs upstairs and she goes into HH's room and she jumps on him and she kisses him, and then she runs away. So this is again, so she's the one who instigates this. She kisses him, and then she runs away, and he falls apart.
Well, what's the word? How do you pronounce it? Reciprocate. It wasn't just
Reciprocating.
her kissing him.
Yeah.
You
So
can't
in a
just,
way,
yeah, you can't just kiss someone against their will, that you say.
well, yeah, so they kiss. But this is also him, I guess, knowing that Lolita is interested in him in some way. So this is a whole level, and so he can't stop thinking about this kiss. Um, and he's obsessing about this kiss, and he gets a note from the maid Louise, and it's a note from Charlotte Hayes, and she has written him a letter, and she's confessing that she is in love with him, so deeply in love with him, and it's painful. And she goes through this whole long letter about how she being around him is pain unless he can reciprocate the love. And so she says that either you have to reciprocate my love and marry me, or I want you gone. I want you to leave the house. So
Can I say real quick? This is the point where I felt sorry for Mrs. Hayes.
really,
Yeah.
Yes, I felt sorry for her for the simple fact the way how he's manipulative and everything else. That at that point I thought, watch, she's going to stick around and use her because therefore now Lolita is his kid, and will try to manipulate it even more.
which is pretty
I
much
feel sorry for her.
exactly what happens.
For her because I knew she was not going to get what she wanted.
Right. And I mean, even in reality, a lot of this is how pedophilia does happen, right? It's single moms who start
Oh,
dating
yes.
boyfriends, and then these boyfriends take, and they're often in love with these people, and it actually shows it's kind of parallel. Her love for him is parallel to his love for Lolita, right? She becomes obsessed with him and controlling and a very jealous person, very and she tried almost manipulative in some way, just the way that he is. And interestingly enough, all of the criticisms that he has of her are reflective of himself, right? So he's guilty of literally doing everything that she does, but then he's critical of her for these reasons. And so he at first he considers marrying Charlotte so that he can stay with Lolita. And at this point, he starts toying with the idea of giving both mother and daughter sleeping pills in order to fondle Lolita while she's sleeping.
Another favorite part of mine.
Mm-hmm. But he says here that he would stop in short of having sex with the girl. So he
Yeah,
doesn't.
okay.
So he doesn't. So again, these and a lot of emphasis on him fantasizing about these things and not so much acting on them quite yet.
Yeah, actually, he even sometimes says that he doesn't want to hurt her or something. Like he wants to be
Yeah.
the good guy. And
Yeah,
Lolita
yeah. There
says,
are times where he does feel, but honestly though, he doesn't like talk about her very much as a person at all. Like what she's interested in,
no,
what she
yeah.
likes. Like you don't hear her voice that much. Like it's all just him and his fantasies about her, not very much about who
Hold
she
on,
is
hold
as a
on, hold
person
on,
or
hold
an
on. Are
individual.
you seriously complaining that the pedophile child molester isn't taking the girl's personality into consideration?
No,
Well, I feel
just
like you look at
looking at the
someone like
book.
Michael Jackson and you think like for him like he actually like was stuck in childhood and wanted to
Oh,
enjoyed
come
being
on.
with the kids or something. Like, there's a different level. Um,
Yeah, he enjoyed
like
him by fucking him.
but I think it was also like enjoying the fact that they're children, kind of like being a child
Yes,
himself.
exactly.
I don't
That's his whole
know.
point of the nymphites. He doesn't give a fuck about the girl. He already gave it a
Yeah.
call sign. He already said, "Here is my mystical, mythical thing that I want to put my penis in. It's 9 to 14-year-olds that look like this with vaginas this small, and I want to fucking play fight with them and act and be super intellectually superior at everything. And I want to scheme around her back, and I want to go around and touch all their clothes and masturbate into her panties while she doesn't know this. And I'm gonna run around and be the super fucking person and it's like, look how smart and intelligent I am, so I must be right. Let me just check into a mental institution and fucking pretend to be mentally insane and pretend to fuck with the doctors. While the doctors are sitting there being like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? He's here on his own free will. We're not even diagnosing him. He's just under observation. What is he doing? Like, yeah, obviously he doesn't give a fuck about her personality. Obviously he doesn't give a fuck about her, any part of her. He found the perfect size for his tiny penis. That
No,
is
but
it.
no, okay. See, the thing is, like, if it was any other girl, I would be like, yeah, like when he talks about other nymphites, but with Lolita, she does become something particular to him. And so in the
That's
Especially
later
Wait,
on in the
wait,
story.
wait, wait. How are you making that distinction at all?
because I actually read the book.
Okay, but okay, hold on. There's another aspect of this that we have to take a look at. Just for a quick second. According to Siggy about the book, she said that Lolita is also the one that starts to initiate a lot of this stuff, as we
Okay, we
just
haven't
saw,
gone to
right?
that point yet, but yes,
Well,
every interaction they have,
Yeah, but
so
she was just
But he
playing, in
was
my
the
opinion.
spark. He's the one that set it all up so she would.
or he
in a,
thinks he did. He's
okay.
clearly
He
a
thinks he
huge
did, yeah.
unreliable
Yeah.
narrator, right? We know he's an unreliable narrator, and that's
Yes, yeah,
something.
that's an ongoing theme in the book that he is an
Yes.
unreliable narrator. But before, okay, so here's the thing: she does
But
so with this
that's
first
it.
kiss, with all of these stuff, she is that
Yeah.
he fantasizes, doesn't act on it, and even when he does want to act on it, he doesn't want her to be aware that he's acting on it. Like he wants, like that's why he wants to drug her. Like he doesn't want her to know. Um, and in most of the incidences she is the one that kind of instigates it, but we get into that later, and when we'll get into that portion of that whole scene. And there's actually been a lot of debates about this very topic of the fact that she is the instigator, but is she really, she's really like, or not, or anyway, so we'll get to that. So he decides that he's going to marry Charlotte, and he calls the summer camp to tell Charlotte, but she's not there, and he reaches Lolita instead. And he informs Lolita that he plans to marry her mother, and she seems distracted and not interested. And he gets upset and thinks that like she's already forgotten about him and she's having fun at camp. But he believes that no matter what, he can still win back her affections when she comes back.
Okay,
Um,
wait. I'm going to introduce this idea right now. He's already clearly acting like a hormonal 13-year-old. Like you see it. You see it all over his behavior. Him coming in his pants while just play fighting, him fucking fixating on sexual on the specific women sexually, him even having a preferred fucking thing. And even there, he gets her on the phone and she doesn't fucking sound super ecstatic about fucking
yeah,
hearing from him. It doesn't sound upset about him
and he
marrying
gets
her mom,
butthurt.
and
Yeah.
he gets all fucking butthurt about it like a 13-year-old. Maybe we have to introduce the idea that he was sexually molested as a fucking child, and that's the only way he understands it. and he might not be wanting to fucking face up to it, and that's why he's finding himself being really attracted to young things. Because
Mhm.
according to psychology, what you're attracted to is generally how you were introduced to sexuality.
Let me Loki kind of stirred a thought in me. What if is his
Well,
mentality what if his mentality was stuck in that period of time,
It is.
and now he's picking up where he left off?
Well, that's what they say. Like,
yeah,
have you guys ever heard
but
of
but we don't have enough information to go on
Yes, we
on
do.
this.
We
We
have
don't have enough
psychology.
information, Loki, to do that.
We have
Well,
psychology. We can
No,
interpret.
he did not say he. Look, I wanted to bring it up for a while now. I watched the stream that Merlin recommended to me for this, the Andy and Blair White stream
Oh yeah, that
versus a
one.
creepy
Yeah.
16-year-old pedophile guy. That pedophile said that he was not, in fact, molested or sexually abused as a child. I do not believe that every single pedophile had to be
No,
abused
yeah.
as a child. That is bullshit.
Or
I'm
he
pretty
just
sure that
doesn't
they were not.
remember. You could have been.
Wait.
I'm pretty sure that all
Hold
those
on.
people who abused me were not all abused themselves, okay? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. First of all, I didn't say abused 100% of the time. I said introduced to sexuality. There's a very clear distinction between being abused and being introduced. If the first time you masturbated was at 7 years old, maybe that's what you understand sexuality to come from. It's the introduction of something that normalizes in your brain.
I'm not sure about that.
I mean,
Maybe.
even with his character, like it's not necessarily just own abuse and stuff like that. Like it's a whole level. Like he has this level of narcissism and sociopathy, and like you could say that about all pedophiles, but I don't think that's the case. Like he like does he reduces Lolita, and it's specific to her in some way because he is attracted to other girls, but with her it's specific, and like he
Could it
outside,
be
it's like
because
she's
she's
nothing
there?
outside of him. Like everything is my
Could
Lolita,
it
my
be
Lo, my Dolly,
because
my.
she's there? She's in his house. She's in his life. Of course, you fixate on what's in front of you, especially
Uh,
when what's in
That's
front of you
absurd.
I
fits
don't I,
your
d- I
fetish.
don't I
That's
don't know
only
if this would
absurd
have
because
been.
when they get separated, he's still obsessed about her and not looking and not hunting other Lolitas.
Yeah. Right. But at the same time, like he's convinced that he loves her. Um, but he also doesn't think of her outside of him. Like it's my, like he keeps saying my Dolly, my Lolita, my Lo, my, like it's always mine. Like
Yeah.
he owns her in this way. But then he does it, like he romanticizes it and uses all these elegant and beautiful words to like describe like really awful things. Right. And so that's one of the things of the book, like the language and the narration in the book. Uses all of these like beautifully phrased, using like very nice words that are elegant, but then you're describing horrible things. Um
Down
and
to what we talked about earlier is the way he views pedophilia. That he's not like the other guys, and he's
not.
special.
Yes,
And
exactly.
this and that and everything else.
And we'll contrast him to the Quilty character that comes up later in the sense of how how in this story it's shown how he could be different than other pedophiles. So anyways, so Charlotte and HH become lovers, and they start planning the wedding, and you start to get to know Charlotte, which I actually think is quite a despicable character as well. Um, and she questions him on whether he's a good Christian, and if he's not, then she would commit suicide. So clearly, like, her morals are in the wrong place. Um, and so she also enjoys like the prestige of being engaged to him and being like a woman that's going to get married, and she like waits on him hands and foot, and she redecorates, and so at some point, like, he actually states that he enjoys some aspect of this affair, because it's improving her looks. She's starting to take care of herself more. But he still keeps saying about how this is a way for him to get close to Lolita. And so the engagement becomes like this highly social event, and she redecorates the house. But you see that Charlotte doesn't actually have very many close friends. So there's only like two characters that she's friends with. Um, So again, and so Charlotte she starts like quizzing him on his past like relationships, and she's really jealous, and she makes him confess all his previous relationships and then disown them, and say that she's the only one for him, that she's the only one true love, um and that that his life had no meaning until he had met her. It's like in the same way that he sees Lolita, like that's what she wants. Like she wants him to see her the way that he sees Lolita. Um, and one of the things that keeps frustrating him, though, even though that he grows used to Charlotte, is that she constantly keeps putting Lolita down, and this really upsets him, of how negative she is towards them.
And actually, that's quite a good point because she was a pretty damn horrible mother.
Yeah, exactly. I think she's a pretty despicable character too. Like she's just as selfish. She's only concerned with herself. She doesn't she romanticizes her relationship with HH in the same way. No distinction of what he is, what kind of person he has. Just what the people, like kind of like people who are in love with the idea of love and not the person, right? Like it's about
Yeah.
the fantasy. It's not about the actual gritty. Like she doesn't get to know HH as a person at all. She doesn't consider his hobbies, like she doesn't let him like read his book. He just wants her she just wants him to be in love with her,
I think
that's it.
Mrs. Hayes wanted him to be like her ex-husband, her past husband. Because if you see that she mentioned several times about how caring and her husband was and everything else and all that,
Yeah,
it
so
seems like
maybe
she wanted her
yeah.
husband back, and she put it all on HH being the perfect
Um
husband that she had when she was in the Midwest.
we
Yeah, and
also
she
learn that she
always.
loses a kid.
Yeah,
And
Yeah,
that's
maybe
what I wanted.
so maybe her anger to Lolita is that she has a son who's Lolita's little brother, and he dies. And I feel like mother and daughter relationships, like in certain cases, mothers love their sons more and become pretty disdainful to their daughters in a way because they see themselves in it. There's all this like psychology behind that too. So I wonder if her like frustration with Lolita has something to do with the fact that she lived and her beloved son died.
it could
Yeah,
be.
Um,
that's true.
but also you start to see but Lolita is also like kind of like a vulgar, outspoken, not well behaved child either.
I,
um
Mhm.
I think I think at this point when I read this part, I think this is where I seen him put her Lolita on a pedestal.
yes, yes,
This
and
is
that
where he's
pedestal falls apart later, which
right.
which is interesting, because
Yeah.
later in the book when he's actually like with her, he starts at there is one point where he's like, okay, like maybe Charlotte had a point,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah, I
so
remember that.
so
That's pretty funny.
so yeah so he so anyways, Charlotte confesses that she's gonna get a real maid and send Lolita off to boarding school, and he gets really upset about this, but he doesn't want to say anything because he doesn't want to give himself away, and he can tell that Charlotte is very sensitive, and if he defends Lolita in some way or says something, then she'll get suspicious, and so he doesn't want to do that, but he but he's still like angry and frustrated, and so he starts giving her the silent treatment. And when she decides that they're going to go on a trip together to England in the fall, he decides that this is the case that he's going to stand up. And so he argues against her, and he says, "You're making all the decisions, and I was happy with that, but I am still the man in the relationship. You decide everything. You decide where we go. You decide at the wedding. You make all these decisions without even consulting me."
Yeah, and
And
it
so
was fun. I just wanted to interject. It was very funny that the silent treatment didn't work on her at all. Like he mentions how it used to work on Valeria, his ex-wife, and doesn't work at all on Charlotte. So I think that you had this. Goes back to the point where you said that she basically wants her husband back or something like that.
yeah, she doesn't even notice that he's upset, pretty much. She's so caught in her own world and her own fantasy that she doesn't even realize that like he's not happy with what's happening.
It's kind of like karma,
Yeah.
you know.
Um
He treats Lolita like that, and now he's getting treated like he's treating Lolita, but he's not seeing it.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's not. And that's kind of like the significant, that's the parallel in the book and why this is a very well written book. There's all these layers to these things, right? And so finally, after he stands up, she tries to like make things better, and she says we should go and stay at a hotel called the Enchanted Hunters, which again comes back later in the novel. And he also has this small table in his study, and she asks him, what is it, like, why do you, what's inside this table, why do you lock it? And he teases her by saying that it's love letters, but it's really where
Well,
he's keeping his diary.
well, pretty much.
Should have said something boring. Document.
Well, he was almost right. It wasn't letters; it was a diary, and the love was a demented kind of love.
Yeah.
So he kind of told the truth. It was a half truth.
Pretty much, yeah. Well, don't they make the best lies half truths?
Yep, they do.
So at this point, he knows Lolita's coming back from camp. They find out that she can only start attending boarding school in January, so he's kind of happy about that. And then he starts visiting doctors, saying that he has insomnia so that he can get sleeping pills. And he actually starts experimenting on Charlotte a little bit, giving her different concoctions of sleeping pill and testing to see whether she would wake up or not. And like he's already practicing these things, right? And so now there's a pivotal change in the book where Charlotte breaks into the desk and actually finds the journals, and she sees where he's lusting for Lolita. And she gets angry and starts screaming and crying and intends to leave with that little tramp. So the fact is that she's not upset that some guy is fantasizing about her 12-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
She's jealous and upset that he was in love with Lolita and not her. And that she was going to punish him by taking her away from him, not to protect her, but to hurt him.
Yeah, and actually there was one thing, spoiler alert, but when he later tries to read, her crumpled up letter, there's a line. He can't read much, but there's one line, and she says, "Maybe a year later." Bitch, a year later. What?
Yeah.
She wanted to get back to him, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, she's willing to even forgive him if he had still wanted her somehow. So she gets angry. So he's like, okay, no, hold on, calm down. I'm gonna go make you a drink. He goes to make her a drink, and he decides that what he's gonna tell her is that this journal is just merely a part of the book that he's working on, and these names just happen to be the names. He started this book when he first moved here, and he just used their names because they were handy names. And this has nothing to do with them, and to not overreact. And so he goes to take the drink, and he gets a phone call that says Charlotte has been run over by a car. So apparently she runs away while he goes to get the drink, and she runs outside, and this character, Mr. McCoo, and again, another theme of like all of these things keep working out for him because of this Mr. McCoo character, like how he ends up living with Lolita, and then he's the one who eliminates Charlotte for him.
It's like the devil working. It's like the devil in his life.
Right. Yeah. So it's almost like by accident or somehow these situations work out for him to allow him to be able to like kind of pursue his obsession. And so she dies. Charlotte dies by getting hit by a car. He doesn't murder her, but in some ways you can say that she does.
Oh yes, and he wanted to murder her. There was actually point when he wanted to murder her, by the way. I just thought it was pretty important and we should have mentioned it for a while.
Yeah, his intentions were there, definitely.
Yeah. So she had tripped on wet cement, and she falls into the path of a car, and so in a way he does murder her because clearly she's distraught and not paying attention to what she's going. So her finding out about this is what inevitably leads to her death.
He was the catalyst. Yeah, he was the catalyst to her death.
Yeah.
And so she has these letters. One is addressed to Lolita, one is addressed to him, and one is addressed to her friends. And he burns all these letters, and then he convinces that Charlotte's friends that he had an affair with Charlotte many years ago when he was still married to Valeria, whatever. I don't know how to pronounce her name. And so Charlotte's friend kind of rushes to the conclusion that HH is actually father.
Which was his idea.
Yeah.
He
So
suggested it.
he's just comes up with these kinds of lies to manipulate people around him. Um, and
Yeah.
so he tells her, don't tell Lolita about her mother's death because it's gonna ruin her time at camp. And he tells them that he's gonna go pick her up and take her away on a trip and break the news to her. Um, the driver that kills Charlotte comes to apologize and says that it wasn't his fault and he's all guilty. And Jumper feels guilty because at this point he destroys his journal. When she finds out, he tries to destroy it, but then he feels guilt. He feels upset that and regrets that he does it because now he doesn't have like his fantasy book where he can relive all of his fantasies about Lolita.
And I think that also, I think it represents the part of his chapter is gone now. This is a new chapter.
Yeah, pretty much.
So he purged himself, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
By burning his diary.
Yeah.
So at this point is where we get into
Wait. Purged himself, or did he destroy evidence?
Both. I think it was both. I think the act of doing it was to get rid of evidence, but in the story, it was kind of like a purging effect because now he's entering a new chapter. But yeah, he was.
So he's ready to find a new nymphite.
But it was maybe like the anti-purging, like maybe anti-purging.
It's like now it's going to be taken to the next level.
Not in the cleansing hellfire way.
No, he turns into a trans and he becomes a nymphlite himself. End of story. Okay. Anyway.
Okay. So he figures out. So he doesn't allow himself to actually become really excited about the thought of being with Lolita at first, and he tries he's trying to figure out what the best way is to kind of like take her away. And so he plans to get her out of camp by saying that her mother has fallen sick. At first he's a little bit unsure that she's maybe had already heard about Charlotte's death, but she's been on a hike and she doesn't know anything. And so he tells the camp that that he's coming to pick her up, that her mother's sick in the hospital, and for her to be ready. And he makes reservations at the hotel, the Enchanted Hunters, which is the hotel that Charlotte had mentioned to him. And so he picks up Lolita from camp, and there's a moment where he actually like thinks about like maybe he should just be a good father to her. But then that moment passes when he realizes like he's in love with her. And so he tells Lolita that her mother is in the hospital, and they drive off, and Lolita starts like again like being kind of flirtatious with him. So she says like, why have you been unfaithful to me? But then she kisses him again, and then in the midst of it a policeman stops them, and this kind of alludes to like how he gets caught later. There's like these cops, like policemen coming in and out kind of happen throughout the book a little bit, but like it's never for the actual reason of him breaking the law. Like it's for like he didn't stop at a stop sign or something. Like it's not the real like what he should get caught for. It's other like arbitrary things. And so they arrive at the hotel, and they're in room 342. So this is again back to the number of 342. And he tries to he pretending that like he's trying to be a father. He tries to convince he asks the hotel to get like a cot for her, and if there's rooms with like a 2 beds or something. And when they realize that they're going to have to share a double bed, Lolita giggles and says like that would be incest kind of thing. So she's already being really flirtatious with him and alluding to this kind of relationship with him. And so finally, so then there's a scene in the room where Lolita shows Humbert, is that how you say his name? Humbert, yeah. How to kiss, but then suddenly she loses interest. And because she spots someone who looks like Quilty, the celebrity that she admires. And so back in the room, he gives her a sleeping pill and she becomes drowsy. And as she falls asleep, she tells Humbert that she's been a disgusting girl. And Humbert tells her to tell him tomorrow, and he locks the door and he goes downstairs. So again, like when I was reading this part of the book, it seemed like he's still resistant to act on his urges, kind of thing. But then she's also the
he
one.
still experimented with sleeping pills. Don't forget.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
And so this quilty character comes back into the story here. So this is again him, like kind of someone who resembles him coming in. And so anyways, he goes back into the room, and he's like anticipating like fondling her while she's unconscious. But he claims that he hadn't planned on taking like Lolita's innocence or purity. He just wants to fondle her while she's sleeping.
Yeah, right.
That.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah, it happens every day.
Yeah.
Of course.
And this is a moment where you kind of see another shift in the book, because this is a moment where he realizes that Lolita and Annabelle are not exactly the same. And if he had known like how this was gonna play out, he might have actually done things differently. And so he goes back into the hotel. He's wandering. He comes in, and he comes back. So he leaves again, comes back, leaves again, and then he returns to the hotel and he finds Lolita awake. He climbs into bed with her, but he doesn't make any advances, and he just stays up all night. And then Lolita wakes up in the morning and she nuzzles him, and she asks him if he's ever had sex as a youth. And so she says, "You never had sex when you were a kid?" And he says no, and she's like, "Okay, let me show you." So this is the scene where she has sex with him. Interestingly enough, he doesn't describe it in the book.
I wonder why.
It was implied that the guy who edited, who wrote the foreword, edited it out. At least that's what.
I mean, in the analysis on Sparks Notes, they say it's so that they keep the reader's sympathy. Like he doesn't want to actually describe that because the reader, he's also the other thing we didn't bring up, the fact that he's talking to the reader as though they're the jury.
Yeah.
In his trial, so he refers to them as the jury. So one of the reasons could be that he's trying to like maintain the sympathy of the jury.
It could be that I
because he is a victim after all, as he keeps on pointing out.
Yeah.
Right. And so here's the thing. So she's the one who initiates the sex, and so this is like becoming a huge debate with even in feminists and stuff like that she initiated it and she's getting slut shamed and whatever, and she's still a 12-year-old girl though. And the one thing that is important to point out is that so you also learn that that in fact he was not her first. So this is when he learns that Lolita has already been kind of deflowered, kind of thing. And so a year before, when she was at camp, apparently
a year before.
Yeah, it was.
What?
Yeah, so she was at another camp the year before. This is how she tells the story, that she was at a camp a year before, and there's these her friend Charlie and Barbara, and they would take turns having sex with Charlie, and this is like kind of a thing that sex was just an activity children did.
Wait. But he didn't meet Charlie in the camp. He did meet him. You saw
Did
him.
he?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, that's why I thought it was back, at the camp that Charlotte sent her to back here. Because
okay, maybe it was. I'm not sure about the specific. I think somewhere.
Well, sorry, I'm not usually this autistic.
How's that for another twist of karma? He thinks he's going to be the first one and everything else, and
Yeah. Right.
And also, I was going to say, I think how when the predator catches his prey, and then all of a sudden he loses all ambition and everything else for it because he has the possession. I think he's going through a sense of that right now. He spent all this time getting Lolita. Now Lolita's his, and he's
Yes.
So she tells him that these kids have just been experimenting sexually with one another, and she
Right.
like describes it like as an activity that is fun.
This entire part sounds like Sounds like the author is trying to express the idea that it's okay to have sex with 13 and
No.
12-year-olds
No.
because they're already
No.
having sex with each other.
No,
No.
not at all. Because, and this is where you kind of see a shift in her character. Because even if they are kids who are having sex with each other, there is no sign that this 12-year-old girl, regardless of her experience with other kids, is ready for a full-fledged relationship with an adult male who is going to ultimately control every single aspect of her life.
Okay, the adult male who wants to control her life is the antagonist or the protagonist. What is he in this book? Is he someone we're supposed to
He's the
look?
protagonist.
Are you sure he's the protagonist?
Well,
Yes.
he's the main character.
Like, that doesn't make it. Okay, that does not make. I guess that
Yes,
could
it
make
does.
him
The
being
protagonist
the main
is the main
character
character.
doesn't mean that you're the
It
bad
doesn't mean
guy.
he has to be a good. No.
No, it
There's
does
no-
not.
So is she the antagonist?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any
No,
sense.
she's not.
Antagonist doesn't mean you're bad or good.
The,
It just means you're the
guy
opposite.
that looks like the cousin is the antagonist. If we are looking
Oh,
for
that's
proper
true. Cruelty
literature
is actually
terms.
the real, like, yeah.
Yeah, he is the guy that just because someone is a protagonist does not mean that he is not despicable. I could point to many books where the protagonist is despicable. That does not mean that any of these books are, advocating for something that is not moral.
Right. So yeah. Either way, like you see, so right away you see a change in Lolita's character as well. So after this incident, he starts becoming really controlling. He tells her not to talk to strangers. He starts noticing, and so there's another man that resembles Quilty, and he sees him again. And then Lolita starts becoming like really moody and starts becoming disinterested in him. And then he starts worrying about how they're going to keep this arrangement like a secret.
And he basically scares the shit out of her.
Yeah, and then and even though she gets irritated when he touches, like when he touches her, and she makes a comment about like how she hurts, like inside, like she hurts, like the sex hurt her, um, and she makes a joke even that, oh, she was only an innocent girl, and he's ruined her. What have you done to me? I was an innocent girl, and he even jokes about telling the police that she's going to tell the police that HH raped her.
Yeah, and don't
but
forget. And don't forget that he did at one point tell her about her mother.
Yeah. Well, we get that. So she and so she starts complaining about the pains, and she starts accusing of HH of tearing something inside her, and she becomes angry and she demands to call her mother, and that's when he tells her that her mother is dead. And that scene was like one of the moments where like that was when I was like, holy shit, like this is really sad. Like this was such a like dark moment in the book. Like there's two moments in the book that I actually really like was emotionally overwhelmed, and this was one of them. And she finds out that her mother's dead. They go into another town, and he gets her they get separate rooms, but then he hears Lolita like bawling and crying and sobbing. Yeah. And then at some point in the night, she creeps into his bed again, seeking comfort, and even HH pretty much admits like she has nowhere else to go. So in a way, like he's kind of won now. Like he's all she has at this point. And even despite her relationship with her mother, she has this overwhelming grief at hearing the news of the loss of her mother.
Of course.
Well, she probably feels alone now. She probably feels alone.
Like there's no one else on her side anymore.
Yeah. And she has to depend on this loser?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Poor kid.
And so also the other thing is, and like a lot of teenagers, she isn't even prepared for the emotions that arise from sex, like let alone with like a grown man who happens to be your stepfather. Like there's so many levels to this. And so she's confused by this, and so she wants her mom, and then when she finds out, and then when she demands for her mom, she finds out her mom is dead. and then all she can do is seek comfort from the person who's supposed to be her protector. So this is kind of showing that everyone in her life that was supposed to protect her failed,
Yeah.
including her own mother.
And her dad. He died.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, he is so insensitive to her feelings. Like he doesn't think that
Yeah.
maybe these bad moods that she's having is finding. So like afterwards, she becomes really like aggressive, and she's like she starts being in bad moods and having fits and whatever. And he gets frustrated about it. And this is when he makes the comment of, "Oh, maybe Charlotte had a point," not even thinking that maybe this girl is just grieving the death of her mother.
And
Right?
that's like you were saying, she's going into puberty, and she's going to have all these feelings and everything else. And of course, he doesn't understand because she's just a possession. It's something that he worked hard for.
So yeah. So this is the end of part one, and then we go into part two, and then part two is pretty much him and Lolita traveling across the United States, and by this point he's having like just they're in a full on like sexual relationship, um and he's really really controlling of her. She's someone who's really flirtatious. She likes to be social, so he tries to restrict that. He allows her to hang out with girls her own age, but he restricts her access to boys.
He always
And
has to know where she is.
yeah, but then he also tries to like spoil her and buy her things to keep her happy. um and then this is the part where he starts kind of emotionally kind of abusing her too, by threatening her and saying that if he ever accuses her of rape, she'll end up at like a state-run school, and there's no one in the world that she'll ever have, and she'll be alone, and she doesn't know where she'll end up, kind of thing, and kind of threatening her with the fear of like, if you ever leave me, things are going to end up worse for you, not better. And so finally, after like a year of them traveling all over the country, but he even makes a statement about how they travel but don't really see anything, because everything is just away from him being able to have his relationship with her, and not have the public, because if you're moving from place to place, you don't know anybody, right? So no one can be suspicious of your relationship. So he doesn't even have to try that hard to fight. And there's actually several times in the book where they almost get caught, and then they manage to escape.
And actually, he even marvels at how easy it is, because they go to these motels, like not like normal family hotels, but totally motels, love hotels basically, and no one seems to care too much. It seems.
Yeah. And even if they could, no one could really act on it because they leave. But then by the end, they end
Yeah.
up in a town where was Lolita's birthplace, and they kind of settle down there. So he keeps pointing out the fact that Lolita like tries to like pick up hitchhikers, and his sexual relationship with her has given her an air that attracts other men and boys to her, and how much she likes to flirt, and then
In
there's
other
like
words, growing up.
yeah, pretty
Growing
much,
up.
yeah. And so yeah, so all he's trying to do is keep Lolita happy enough to keep having sex with him. And
Yeah.
and he keeps being indifferent to the fact that she kind of wants to meet like other people. And so yeah, so finally they settle down in this town, and I'm skipping like a certain details of the book. I suggest you guys actually read it if you want the full experience. But they settle down in this town, and he puts Lolita in school, and he starts teaching or doing some sort of like some sort of appointment at the school. And so right away he's critical of the school that she's in because it's emphasizing social skills rather than intellectual achievements, and it's just preparing women for being like, you know, good housewives. Like the Bursley girls, it's an all girls school, and they focus on the 4Ds: dramatic, dance, debating, and dating. Um, and he's like critical that they, and there's actually throughout the book there's times where he keeps trying to educate Lolita, like get her to read books, but she's more interested in
Yeah.
comic books and magazines, and she doesn't care. um and he's trying to like make her smarter, but like she doesn't want that. um and he's kind of like frustrated at that, and he's critical that the school isn't like teaching them to be like intellectual, but just teaching them to be housewives and stuff. And
I think this is showing kind of his stupidity as well, ignorance, that he doesn't know kids well enough. That
yeah,
he thinks that when he got Lolita, he would be able to warp her mind and everything else, but he didn't realize the fact that she's her own individual person. She's going to be doing these things, and she's not going to be into books and everything else. She's going to be, like you said, into social things. So I think
pretty much. She's a teenager.
he did not think that through.
No,
So
not at all.
that was definitely ignorance on his part.
And he thinks that he could solely satisfy all her needs. Like this idea that if he just provides her with everything, she'll be happy. And he can't do that because no one is one dimensional and just gets happy with one source of from one source, right? Like she wants to have her life.
And I think he's grasping at straws too, because he doesn't know what else to do because his knowledge is so limited. Issue
Yeah.
that he's just throwing everything against the wall and see what sticks. Pretty much. And stuff.
He's and so there's this other character that comes up who's Gaston Gordon, who's a French so there's a lot of commentary on this book about like elitism and academia and scholars and stuff like that. So
Well, haven't you noticed that doctors and PhDs have been the enemy in pop culture since like the 50s?
apparently,
Maybe even earlier than that.
It's earlier than that. Ever since people realized that, you know, the intellectuals of today, how they look down on the normal people, and like a disconnect. And
right,
it's only
but
been
then
growing.
he's exactly doing that, which is so funny that he keeps
Exactly.
looking to he's right. So he meets this guy, and he's a French sophisticated, and this is our introduction to pedophile number 2, which is he's Gaston is someone who likes small boys in the neighborhood. So he has pictures of them, and he likes to bring like little boys into his room. But but HH is actually like critical of his style of pedophilia. Like it's meaningless. It's like a low class of pedophilia. Like his version is romantic and loving, and his is just like, you know, arbitrary. And he actually, so they play chess together, but he finds him as a mediocre scholar, and he's somewhat dim-witted, right? So he keeps trying to distinguish himself from others who are like him, pretty much.
So he's just
Pretty
determined
much,
to be the smartest person in the room, regardless of anything.
Yeah.
And I bet because he found this dim-witted other pedophile, they're going to become best friends, just so he can stay the smartest person in the room.
Yeah, well, not best friends, but he starts hanging out with the guy.
Of course.
And so this them settling down in this small town kind of changes the dynamic of their relationship into a little bit of a typical father-daughter relationship, where she's trying to rebel as a teenager, and she wants to go hang out with her friends, and she wants to be part of a part of the plays, and she wants to, like, you know, have her independence, and he's controlling and possessive and doesn't let her do that. And and then you see this like settling down at this school is also where you see this shift in Lolita, where she starts taking control now, and she starts demanding money now, more money for the sexual favors, and he will only perform for him if he gives her something. But Humbert is so paranoid that even when he does give her money, he goes back into her room and steals the money so that she can't run away. So he's clearly realizing that this is something that might happen, that she's going to try to run away. And he becomes really, really paranoid of that. And he becomes paranoid that Lolita's attracting other boys. And so, but he doesn't want to be like too controlling. So he tries to let her interact with some boys, but never alone, which really upsets her. He controls every aspect of her life. Um, and then, but he still can't be sure that that maybe she is having another relationship, but he doesn't really have a suspect in mind. Um, and and then he starts wondering, like, how has he managed to fool everyone all of this time? Like, how is it that nobody's found out that something is wrong? And so he just starts. This is like where you see his downturn, really, in the book. He starts becoming anxious and controlling. And at some point he starts drinking. He finds himself like not interested in Lolita's friends. They're like not they're mediocre nymphs.
I think that she knows about his sexual preferences, so she doesn't allow any of the girls that he would find attractive near him. Because she does have a few friends that he would, like probably, but she only takes like one older girl, I think, and one sort of uglish girl.
Yeah, but they seem to be attracted to him, but he says that he doesn't really find himself attracted to her, and his only interest is to quiz them and to find out if Lolita's like seeing someone or find out information about her, which is his interest in this girl Mona. He flirts with her, but only to like get information out of her.
And this brings me to a second point about him. Sorry, Italy.
No, go ahead.
He only thought about the immediate future, and he didn't think about the broad scale, what was going to happen when he got Lolita, and they, have the life together. He didn't realize any of this was going to happen.
Yeah, no idea how this would play out.
So his control, he knows he's losing this control now, and he's grasping at straws desperately.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And he's going mad because of it, and like his obsession even grows more. And so he's desperate for affection from her, but like she kind of like dismisses him and is not interested, and they start having fights. And he wants her even more, but she doesn't care anymore. Like she becomes really indifferent to him almost. And
I think at one point he hits her, but that's way later.
Yeah, that's later. So he keeps trying to keep her attention. He lets her throw a party with and lets her invite boys, but it doesn't impress her. He buys her a tennis racket. He buys her a bicycle, and then he buys her a book of modern American paintings. But then he's disappointed of the fact that she doesn't care. He's disappointed by her inability to appreciate fine art.
Just being a normal kid.
Yeah. And so Lolita ends up being she convinces him to let her be part of a play. And so she starts like rehearsing for this play, and the play is called The Enchanted Hunters, which is again the same hotel in which the mom mentions this is where their relationship gets consummated, and now it's the name of the hotel of the play, and she plays a daughter who bewitches a number of hunters in this play. So he notices this name, but he doesn't kind of like bring up the coincidence of the name of the hotel and the name, and he doesn't want to bring it up to Lolita either. And he assumes that this play is nothing. It's just a small play written for school children. And in fact, he even scoffs at the play's overt romanticism and fantasy. It's so funny. Like it's the lack of self-awareness in this character is just baffling to a certain extent. And so
one thing also. Okay. No, I just wanted to say that one of the reasons why he didn't catch on to the thing early on is because he, found plays inferior to books.
Yeah. Yes, actually, that's true.
Yeah, he doesn't like play.
So it's just such a judgmental person in general, like very judgmental.
He's never satisfied.
No, but then somehow can create this like fantasy about this one like this one girl. Anyways, so one day as she's riding her bike, she teasingly actually asks him if Enchanted Hunter was in fact the name of the hotel where he first raped her. So this is like so she keeps bringing up rape, she keeps bringing up incest. So this even at an understanding, like she's realizing what's been happening to her. Um, and so he finally so again the tables are turning now, and he becomes outraged when he finds out that Lolita's piano teacher when Lolita's piano teacher calls him and says that she's been missing lessons. When he confronts her, she says that she's been rehearsing for the play with her friend Mona, and then he calls Mona to try to corroborate this story. But he can tell that both these girls are lying, and he's realizing that there's something's gone. He also says that she's changed and she possesses fewer nymphlike qualities. Um, and so he freaks out and he panics and he threatens to take her away if she continues lying. And Lolita becomes furious, and they have this huge fight, which he accuses him of violating her, and murdering her mother. And she says, "Murder me like you did my mother." Um, and he kind of like tries to restrain her, and he's hurting her. Um, and that's when the neighbor calls to complain about the noise, and Lolita runs away. And so he goes after her, and he finally finds her in a telephone booth. And she tells him that she hates school, she hates to play, and she wants to leave. And she wants to go back on the road. And relieved, he agrees to her demands. And they get home, and Lolita tells him to carry her upstairs. She's feeling romantic, and he starts crying, like he's just so emotionally overwhelmed by this point. Um, so now, okay, so now this is like a parallel in the book where the roles are being reversed, where originally it was him who's planning this trip to take her away, and now she's the one who's initiating the trip, and she's the one who's controlling where they're going to go. So and I read somewhere where it's almost like she's trying to erase that first trip by doing it her own way in some sense.
That and I think it's because she knows she has control now, because she knows what happened to her. So she knows how to manipulate him now, and so she's going to go to the full extent and getting whatever she wants from him.
Pretty much, exactly that. And so she tells the school that they're leaving, and she's the one who plans where they go and where they stay.
And she has this map.
Yes. And we find out that so he says that so there's some point where the acting coach who was Lolita's acting coach is in the play, says that it's such a shame that Lolita can't finish it because the playwright himself was taken by her. And he asks who wrote the play, and Lolita tells him some woman, Claire something. And we find out that this is actually not a woman. This is Claire Quilty, the actor that she's been obsessed with, the person that keeps popping up. And he's also the playwright. And so they start going down to different hotels, and he keeps a close watch on her. He tries to keep her from talking to anyone, but she manages to disappear sometimes. So she manages to escape him sometimes. And at one point, he sees her like talking to someone, and he starts feeling nervous. And he comes back to like confront her, and he finds her, and like this is like one scene where like he aggressively like rips her clothes off and like is begging her to tell him who is it, who's she talking to, who is he, and like he just becomes overly like distraught and loses control. And then he gets a gun.
Actually, I just wanted to say that I don't know if you remember to mention it, but there's this great car that keeps following them.
Yeah. So he also starts noticing that there's a car that's been following them. And this is when he gets the gun and he notices her talking to other people. And the gun is actually a gun that's supposed to have belonged to Lolita's father. And I don't really know the significance of that
Some
exactly.
poetic justice.
Maybe
Yeah.
because now he's the father, Lolita's father now. Maybe there's
Right.
like a transformation in that area as well.
So
There's more to the. I'm going to say maybe there's more to Lolita's father's death than we first realize.
I don't know. I mean, they never bring that
Not
up in the book.
specified.
It's kind of like out there though.
Yeah.
So I know it's nothing definite, but it feels like there was definitely something following along the path that Lolita's father did.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So he keeps seeing Lolita talking to this strange man who resembles his relative, and this is Quilty, which we find out later, but we don't know this at the time. And he keeps asking her about it, and she keeps like shrugging it off. And then he successes that they're being followed, but she like manages to ignore the kind of ignore it. And when he like confronts her about the play and stuff, they go to a theater and they find themselves watching a play written by Claire Quilty and Vivian Darkbloom. And he gets a little bit suspicious, and when he questions, Lolita again states that no, Vivian is actually the man and Claire is the female author of Enchanted Hunters. And then she questions him. He's like, but didn't you have a crush on a celebrity named Claire Quilty? And she like laughs it off, kind of thing. So they keep moving from place to place. He realizes that Lolita has been seeing one of her friends from Bursley, and he interrogates her again, but she does not budge on her story. She and he tells Lolita that he's actually been writing down the license plates of the cars that have been following them, but he actually discovers that Lolita has been erasing these. And he finds out that the man who's been following him, he starts calling him Trap, whoever has been following him, and he keeps mentioning how he resembles his Swiss relative. And wherever they go, Trap is really always not far behind them. And so he starts keeping this gun in his pocket at this point. And he starts wondering if maybe her acting experience has taught her to be deceitful, kind of thing. And is wondering, like, this is where she's learning these kinds of stuff, which I think is interesting a little bit. And so there's this incident.
But she was like this before the play, though. I mean, maybe she learned some more insights into the play, but I think she was already on her way to being deceptive to him from the road trip and everything else.
Yeah.
And the play just helped. And the play just helped to maybe spark her brain cells to working, thinking,
well, I mean,
I could use this.
I mean, she planned it with other people, like 2 other people.
That's the thing. In reality, the play is what gets her to have this relationship with Quilty, who's the playwright and another pedophile in the book. So he's the kind of the antagonist, right? Not only in the way in which he takes Lolita away from HH, but also how he's like the bad pedophile. He's the bad type of a pedophile kind of thing. But she's still kind of very fond of him for some reason. And she's had this like girl's high school crush on him since she was a child kind of thing. And so he sees that she's talking to him and and he tries to confront her on it, but she kind of like plays, and he's so scared of losing her at this point that he doesn't really know what he can and can't do about the situation. Like he's completely lost control at this point. Like he has no control over what's happening anymore. She's in control now, and he's just kind of following along and panicking and freaking out and just being emotionally distraught.
Because he gambled everything on this, on
Right.
Lolita.
And
Yeah.
she actually seems to be having fun at times, doesn't she? So it's again
Yeah.
the reversal.
Well, if you actually watch the movie, there is a scene where like she's actually enjoying watching him fall apart. Like she has like these like smiles on her face. Like it's very like interesting. Like she's so unaffected by him at this point. Like she's become numb to a certain extent now and
Yeah, 'cause
detached to
now
herself.
Yeah, because now he's the play toy.
Right, right. Um, so Lolita suddenly becomes ill and she gets a really high fever. So he takes her to the hospital. And the hospital says that they have to keep her for the night. And this is the first time he's been separated from Lolita in 2 years. So he calls the hospital and they say that she's recovered. And so he comes back to go pick her up. And he finds himself a little bit feverish himself, so he gets the same illness. So he says that, okay, no, I'll come pick her up tomorrow. And then the next day when he arrives, he informs that Lolita has already left with her uncle. And this point is he goes into a violent rage and he starts freaking out and attacking people at the hospital, and he vows to kill whoever Lolita's abductor is. And so this is a kind of the point in the book where there's again another shift, and it kind of like turns into like a crime novel or a detective story kind of thing, where he now is going on this pursuit to like find her.
Yeah, except that he's a shit detective.
Yes. So yeah, and so the book kind of picks up though in this kind of like a kind of not crime novel kind of way
It
of
sounds like he kind of snapped, and now he's another person.
yes. Yeah, so he
So,
loses it. Yeah. And it's just like just a mess. Like it just the everything has come undone at this point. And so
I wish I could feel sorry for him, but oh well.
he
Anyway.
goes I'll tell you the point in the book that I do feel sorry for him, and that's
Yeah.
not yet though. There is one point that I actually do
Yeah,
feel
me
sorry
too.
for him. I think it's the same point, Lady Bastard, but
Yeah.
we'll get to it. And so so he starts retracing. He goes around the country looking for her. He goes back to every hotel, and he actually notices that they revisited 342 hotels. So they stayed at 342 hotels. And he finds out that Lolita's abductor has been following them for some time. And so he signs into the same hotels every time with a different a different name. But he can tell by the writing that it's the same person. And so he pretty much understands that Lolita and this kidnapper have been in touch since she's initiated this road trip. So the other thing that I was going to say, he makes this whole thing about whether she has learned a lot from acting, but you don't know that maybe it's Quilty
Yeah, I think so.
who's the mastermind behind all of this, right? Like it's not necessarily that she's like so the idea that he's the one who keeps pointing out that she's now manipulating him and how he's taking control and so this is again from his narrative, but this could just be like a girl trying to escape and latching on to someone else, and him and her following the advice that Quilty gives her.
Yeah, I think it was
So
that.
yeah, so this might not like his perception is that this is like she's like this mastermind who's planning this kind of thing, but it might not have actually been her at all.
Well,
But
he
he
also
turns
thinks he's better
himself
than
into the
everyone else.
victim. Yeah, but
Yeah, so he thinks
yeah.
he's better than everyone else, and so he doesn't think that other people could top him in what he does. So he doesn't take that into account at all.
Yeah, pretty much. And he's again turning himself into the victim of like now Lolita's manipulating him, like kind of thing, like how this is being done to him.
Right. Once again, playing the victim as usual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um And so he tries to hire like a detective, and that ends up being useless. And he pretty much can't find her, and he gives up. And he just like tries to rid himself of her possessions, but he can't. And he starts writing poems and psychoanalyzing his same poems and just like pining for her. Um, he begins another relationship with another girl. He finds her ignorant but comforting. Like everyone is just dumb and dim-witted.
No,
Like
she was a grown. I think he describes her as a grown woman who with childlike qualities, but he actually seemed pretty fond of her, and it seems like this is like his transformation is already happening. Like he does not really deride her that much. Like he even says that if not for her, I would have probably killed myself or something like that.
yeah. But
So the change is already happening. You can see it.
But he also like spirals into this form of depression and alcoholism. And him and Rita, which is the new girl, they start like kind of living apart. And so like, but he still kind of maintains the relationship with him, and then he finally gets some letters. So this is about like, I guess 2 years go by that Lolita's gone, and he's just like a miserable shell of a man. And he gets some letters. One is saying that the Hayes estate, one is about the Hayes estate, and the second is a letter from Lolita addressing Humbert as dad. And she says that she has become Mrs. Richard Schiller, and she is currently pregnant, and she's asking for money. But she still withholds her home address in the case that he's still angry. So
Yeah.
reading this letter, he goes in search of her again, and he takes a gun, and he plans to kill Lolita's husband because he assumes that it's the same person who is the one who abducted her. He manages to find where she lives, and he shows up at her house, and he like bathes and dresses in the finest clothes. And so he finally tracks her down in a small town, and Lolita has grown taller, and she wears glasses now, and she's hugely pregnant. And so this is the point where you see again another character shift in the book, where she's no longer a nymphit, he still realizes that he's like deeply in love, like he deeply loves her. And then
at this point, she's about 17 years old.
Yeah. And when she sees Lolita's husband, he's just a simple working man. Lolita tells him that he knows nothing about her past experiences, and he doesn't want him to know.
Wasn't he like also a vet, like from the Second World War or something?
I don't remember. Maybe.
I thought so.
I kind of rushed through the end.
Okay.
And he says that so he realizes that her husband isn't the one who abducted Lolita, and so he keeps pressing her as like, so who was it? Tell me who was it? Like he's still fixated. Like he just needs to know, like, who was the person who took me away from you? And she's like, oh, you really don't know? And he's like, no, you have to tell me. And she says it was Claire Quilty. And so this is the part where I actually start feeling bad for him, because she describes Quilty as like this great love of her life. And that he had known Charlotte and had come to visit like a few times because he's the son of the dentist or whatever. And so at this point, so at this point, her husband comes in, and Lolita introduces Humbert as her father, and HH kind of realizes that he bears no ill will to the man. He actually kind of thinks he's okay, and he's like a good person kind of thing. And so she says that she ran away with Quilty, and they lived on this ranch with friends. And so Quilty is like the bad version of a pedophile kind of thing, where he just surrounds himself with with young kids and young girls and takes advantage of them and keeps switching. And so he wanted Lolita to like engage in like group sex and orgies and all sorts of these stuff. And Lolita refused because she's like, I'm only in love with you and I don't want to do that. And so for that reason, he kicks her out. So Quilty like kicks Lolita out. And so it's interesting though that she still says that she like she still says that he's the true love of her life kind of thing, even though he's this despicable, like a worse pedophile than even HH is. But she's still like, and he's so betrayed and hurt by this.
Yeah, and there was
kind of
this,
thing.
and there was one line in the book that I really liked. He said basically, well, of course, she cares about him because, he broke her heart. I merely broke her life. So it was a very good line, actually.
Yeah.
And you can see that he already, starts to understand starts to care for her, not about just, himself.
Pretty much, yeah. So this is the part of the book where he actually starts being remorseful and realizing like what he's done and how he stole this girl's childhood from her. And so she so with Quilty, so he still says like he still loves her and he begs her to come away with him. And Lolita thinks that she's like you'll only give me money if I come to a motel with you. And he says no, like I'll give you money regardless. And he hands her $4,000.
Yeah, that was the part that I felt the most emotional.
Yeah, so he's like, whether you choose to come with me. Yeah,
that was when he realized how little she cared for him as a man, and and basically he was devastated by
sounds
her
like he was trying
lack of care and whatnot.
Sounds like he was trying to buy her off.
Not really though. Like it was.
No, he would have done anything for her at that point.
Yeah, at that point, yeah. And interestingly, he's so like Lolita is so indifferent to him. Like she sees him and she's like says she's happy to see him. She invites him in. She's not like like fearful. She's not acting like she's happy to see him. She invites him. She introduces her husband to him. She's like, "Do you want to meet him?" Like almost like. And there is a line that she says that he did manage to be a good father. She does say that in some way, like
which kind of reminds me of the Milo situation a bit,
Yeah.
Stockholm syndrome. Best without
kind of. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, like this is someone who's taken care of you to a certain extent, right? And yeah, like she's not like she shares a story with him, and she just like she's not. So she says that like, but she's like genuine, like she seems like she's okay, like happy to see him almost. And so he says like she's alluding that, oh, you'll only give me the money if I perform sexual favors for you. And he's like, no, like you have the money regardless. Like he gives her the money. And then he says, but like come away with me. And she says, no, like I'd rather even go back to Quilty. And when she says that, that's also when I felt really bad for him. Like I don't.
It sounds like karma's come home to roost.
Yes. It has.
So I don't feel sorry for him at all. He deserves this. This is what he deserves.
I get that, but it's just it's like a whole different level of like emotion, right? And so he starts becoming he starts realizing like what he's done, and I think there's a line that says like, will you ever forgive me for what I've done to you? And like she doesn't answer. Like she just says to the dog Molly, like Molly, say goodbye, kind of thing. And so like so he starts kind of becoming remorseful. He has a line. What does he say?
Can't
I can find it.
I can look up real quick if you tell me at least a keyword.
I think I had it. Yeah, so something about like he okay, I'll just find it after. So he starts realizing that he's responsible for Lolita's like loss of childhood.
I think I'm on that page because I had been a good father, she goes, granting me that. So I think
Yeah.
I'm on the page. It's 103, I think, if you need to look up real quick.
I don't want to waste too much time looking it up because it's already 4. So
Yeah, we already been here 2 hours.
So anyways, he leaves. So pretty much he leaves sobbing, and he thinks he can never forget the sinful things that he inflicted on her, and that he will never find peace, and that he's a maniac. The line, "I'm a maniac that deprives Dolores Hayes of her childhood." And so interestingly, now he starts calling her Dolores. So he stops
And
referring to her as Lolita.
Yeah, and one more thing, he actually did call what was going on during those years with Lolita evil. He did not like shrug away. He finally started. I think it finally hit him at that point.
Yes. And he even admits to himself that he realized that he was so consumed by his desire for her that he might have never really even known her. So this is the part of the book where he also just starts addressing her directly and not the jury anymore, and just being so remorseful of everything that he's done. And that he even says that he even realizes that even her strained relationship with Charlotte was preferable to Lolita's life with him, and that Lolita had missed her mother. And so pretty much the book ends with him tracking down Quilty and confronting him, and he's making her he tries to make him remember Lolita. And so he arrives at Quilty with a gun, and he and Quilty tries to he tries to escape. He tries to say that look, you can come live with me, we have young people here, and tries to buy him off with porn, child porn, and all of these stuff. And he's this despicable pedophile, he only cares about kids at the physical level. And he just tries to buy him off by giving him what he needs, kind of thing. And so finally he kills him, and then he leaves, and he's speeding away with a car. And ironically, just like the numerous times that he has been pulled over, he drives off the side of the road, and he gets arrested for running a red light.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And at this point, he realizes that not only the real tragedy is not that he had lost Lolita, but that he had robbed her of her childhood. And he even talks about what would be a good punishment for him. He's talking to
Death.
the jury, and he suggests that no legal punishment could be sufficient or appropriate for his crimes. But so he says that death. He says that the death sentence he can't advocate because he's morally opposed to the capital punishment, although he goes to murder Quilty. But he says that the reasoning of him living on is so that he can tell the story of Lolita and keep her alive in this way. I don't know.
Well, he did. He wrote it down. Kill him. It's that simple. His life is forfeit.
And he did not want to publish the book until his and Lolita's death.
Right.
Yeah.
So at the end of the book, he's in jail. He's writing this story.
So
Go ahead.
And that was the only good thing he ever did. He took that gun and he took out 2 pedophiles at once. So good for him. The only good thing he ever did.
Yeah.
Too bad he didn't turn the gun on himself. Been a really good thing then.
So what? He died anyway.
Yeah.
So what? Is he in jail or is he dead? Who cares? He's no longer.
No, I care if he's in jail or dead. I want him dead, not in jail, because that means he's still breathing.
Yeah. So
okay.
I
So wait. So are we reading the diaries he left behind that he supposedly burned and didn't burn, or we
No.
Oh,
reading
he
the
remembered
court
them.
This is, he
transcripts?
rewrites this in jail.
Yeah, he remember he remembered the diaries so much that he was able to recite them.
Because he's such a smart little cookie at every aspect of his life that he's just
He also
photographic memory,
arranges
right?
Lolita. So this is one thing I didn't know, and Lady Bastard, you pointed out after. So he also even arranges Lolita to have
Yeah.
like to get her estate and things like that to like make things better for her. But apparently she dies giving birth, and that's in the foreword of the book that I
Yeah,
guess you
and
don't
and the
notice.
and the in the last page he says, I hope it was very beautifully written. It was okay. Be nice to your dick and the guy she was married to
Yeah,
and
be good to him. Yeah.
and I hope you have a good life and I hope you have a boy. And I went back to the forward and I realized that there is a tiny line where it says that Mrs. Richard Schiller died giving birth to a stillbirth girl. So there, a very tragic thing indeed.
Oh, for
Yeah.
her, yeah, sad that she died, but I'm sorry. I don't care if he had a change of heart or anything else. The bottom line was he was a pedophile. I
Of
can't see
course,
past. I
Yes,
really
that is
can't.
the
I'm
bottom
sorry.
line.
no,
Um,
man.
but it was a very, very tragic story in every way, and every character was almost tragic. But
Well,
there was
I
one.
don't care too much for Humbert except for those few moments and those few
Yeah.
beautiful lines. And yeah, no one else, and except maybe Lolita. After I realized that after everything, she just died a few months
She
later.
was the true victim of the story in
Yeah,
the
but
end
she
of
was
it.
still such a strong character at the same time.
Oh, she
Like she
was, but
still
she was still the
didn't.
victim.
She
She
never.
didn't.
Of
Go
course.
She
ahead.
didn't. She never. He set the world up for her to be the person she was going to be.
And she still tried to resist and rebel and gain control in her own way. Like she still, tried to take control of her life regardless of her circumstances, which I think is such an admirable character about
Yeah,
her. Like
Yeah, it's like turning from a victim to being a survivor.
and this is
But
what people
it's
don't
like,
really get. Yeah, but this is what people don't really get about Milo. Like she did not report neither Humbert not guilty, but of course she wouldn't. She even I think I don't know. I can't even talk about this,
I
but
mean, fuck. I supported my abuser until she died.
yeah,
I
yeah,
because
actually,
I
actually,
mean,
with all
it's
the
the
shit she did to me, I made sure that she still had a house over her head. I made sure the bills were paid, and I made sure she was alive until the last day where she took her breath.
because this is a different kind of abuse. Like it's not like this is and child again, this is why child abuse is so complicated because when you talk about sexual assault, a lot of the times like sexual assault
yeah,
is something that's violent and it's something,
No, mine wasn't violent.
right. And so in with the case of like
neither
especially
was
this movie,
mine.
it's not, right? Like these are people who pretend to care about the children who, maybe some at some point they do. Like and I maybe that's something that I guess the book is touching on. Like he genuinely starts to care for her as a person by the end of the book, which is something that was not a thing. And he fully never he's still kind of defensive of himself and says that like doesn't really fully admit by the end, but
But
I
he
think
did
he
call it
does.
evil. But he did call it
Yeah.
evil.
And even the notion that she would have been better off with her shit mom than
Yeah.
than the life that he had given her kind of thing. But
And she
it's
was one more thing. She was so worn out by when he met her after those 2 years. I think she was 17, but she did not look 17. She looked way older.
yeah, but interestingly enough, like she just wanted to live her life and kind of just be happy.
Yeah.
She wasn't gonna like let her life get ruined because of her experiences. And she hid all these she even hides her past from her husband, right?
Yeah.
Um and doesn't want him to find out about all of this stuff. So I don't know. I thought it was a really well written book. The themes in it were just amazing. The whole number of 130, like the 342, and even he actually discusses this number, and in the end realizes like it means nothing. Like this is so insignificant. Like we just happen to stay at all of these places, but like who cares? This doesn't add any sort of kind of meaning to it. At the end, everything has been lost, kind of thing. So it's just really interesting how the writer like kind of created these like literary put in these literary devices, but at the same time they're not like in the way like Shakespeare makes them significant. Like it almost breaks the fourth wall where he actually comments on how this doesn't even matter. Like it's nonsense. These are nonsense. He calls them nonsense coincidences.
Mm.
And so just like a level of self-awareness kind of thing. And I guess the progression of self-awareness is also another theme in the book that keeps happening for kind of everyone. Everyone is so caught up in their own world. Like even Charlotte, she's not self-aware of anything. She's so caught up in her own fantasy. And even Lolita too, like she gets caught up with her fantasy of Quilty and doesn't see him for what he really is. And instead of trying to run away, she runs away to another pedophile. Like she doesn't, escape in that sense. She still latches on to another like a perpetrator as a source of
She
escaping.
was used to that type of personality, so she was
Yeah.
just going to something she already knew and was comforted by that.
And she also idealized him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just and in the same way that he idealized her, and in the same way that Charlotte idealizes like OHH, it's
Yeah.
so all of these layers kind of really add a lot of depth to the story.
Like it's not an easy book to read. It's a
No.
very heavy subject, but the way that it is written, and it is very important to read it until the end to understand that it is not, in fact, a pedophile condoning book. That's very important that you understand.
No, it's not. It's not about that at all. I can vouch for that.
No.
But it is a very hard book, and
Yeah.
anyone who's been through child abuse, I think, will definitely have a hard time reading it. Those who haven't been through child abuse, they'll still have a hard time, but it's be on a different level, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I think everyone is going to have a hard time. We started with a certain amount of viewers, and they all left. I think everyone except for one person left because they actually just couldn't. I feel like a lot of people got uncomfortable with the subject matter and just fucked
Yeah.
right off. Keeping
Well,
track of
that's
the
how
like
society is,
ratio
though.
of this video on Twitter, not Twitter, on Reddit, for example, right now, and it's flip flopping from +5 to minus. No, it's back up to 1 now.
Which is such a shame because this book is actually such a good way to actually discuss these issues and become
Yes.
understanding of the effects that they have on people's lives. And it's so
And it's very accurate, I think. Very, very accurate in its portrayal of the things.
This is a story of
I will
demise.
agree
It's
with
a
that.
story of obsession. This is a story of loss of control. It's really like a tragic story, and just to watch it all
And
play out.
never forget the justification of one's actions throughout the years and years of doing
Yeah.
wrong things.
And another thing, there is actually it's even included in the foreword. Like the uncaring mother, the this and that. It's sort of like it's trying to pierce the veil and to tell people what to look for in a pedophile, how to protect children. I think that it could have been one of the aims of this book.
I will admit that if anyone wants to know what goes through a mind of a pedophile and what a victim goes through, whatever, that they should read the book from that standpoint.
I don't know if it's necessarily an accurate portrayal of what would go on in the mind of it. Maybe it's just someone's interpretation or idea of what would go on in the mind of a pedophile.
It just seems like what he wrote about pedophiles. It just seems so uncanny.
Yeah.
And
go through.
Right.
And that's Andy's stream that you, Marlon, mentioned to me. Like,
yes.
I watched it today, a bit yesterday, but who cares? And that person really reminded me of Humbert Humbert in the beginning. Like, he does not care at all for the victim. He does not think of the ramifications. He tries to justify it, and he only thinks for himself. Gosh, like,
Yep.
and he even shared his story, and it was horrifying. And Blair even
And the
tried to
guy goes
explain
around and
everything.
says, "Oh, that's a kink."
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was the response.
And it was very, very, I think, accurate to the book. I think.
Yeah, it was very. He was very detached to the world around him. By the end of it, he was kind of bored because it wasn't about him.
But it also touches on the thing that Milo was saying as well, of like, I was the pursuer, not the pursuee, right? Like, and in a case like this is what happens with Lolita as well. But at the end of the day, even the own pedophile himself realizes that he is the perpetrator. Even if she is the one who instigated it, it's still the adult who is supposed to think about what the consequences. She doesn't understand the consequences this is going to have for her life. And even after the first incident, she kind of does, and she wants her mom, and she's confused by like what has happened, because it's still different than whatever she had experienced with other children, right? And so
I really wanted to say this, that as a child, you do not view yourself as a diminished moral, character. You do not think that
you think
cannot
you're an
consent.
adult. Yeah.
You do not realize that it took me, for me to fucking understand that I was actually abused. I had to, go out of myself and to think of myself at that time, at those couple of times actually, as another child. And when you realize, and when you look at it through this detached manner, that is when you understand what the fuck was going on. That of course a 4-year-old cannot consent to anything.
Right.
So
yeah. But yes, exactly. And she doesn't realize that herself. Like, she doesn't see herself as a child. She sees herself as an adult.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Milo would come in as being Lolita in that
exactly.
thought process.
Exactly. And exactly. Where even if she every single initial contact, it was her, she's the one who initiates it. But at the end of the day, the consequences of those actions come full fold around. And even and I just, and that's why I really like the ending, that he realizes that he stole her childhood. I think that's such a vital line that he brings, that and not just through the abuse of the sex, through controlling her, through preventing her from being a normal teenager, from preventing her from dating and meeting people and having friends and going to parties. Like, it wasn't just about the sexual abuse. It was also about the control that he had over her life, and just everything that this person meant to him, and no understanding of what her needs were as an individual.
Talking about control, an abuser, or one who gets abused, I think, like what Milo did, is probably what most kids get abused are like that. They have to find some way where they have control, because in a situation like that, you have no control whatsoever.
Exactly.
Fought for control. Lolita fought for control. I know I did, and I know Lady probably did too.
Yeah.
And it's just a normal process.
It took me a lot to admit this to myself, and like, okay, I have to say this because as I was reading the book, the first half was actually much more difficult for me, because
for sure.
Because everything up until the time they kissed happened to me too. Like every single, like I was reading, the couch moment, the other types of moments, like, okay, this happened to me, and thankfully nothing like what happened to Lolita happened to me, and all he did was, freak me out years later with a drunken confession and everything. But everything up until that point happened to me, and even the ages, like even I was exactly, I think, 12, like Lolita, and he must have been the same. So I was freaking out as I was reading this.
There's a good line in the book about child abuse, and it's like, it's not the touch that matters, it's what's the intention behind the touch that matters.
Right. And it's really
so it's not the touch, it's
And it's really frustrating that people are so resistant to talking about this book, because this is common. Like, this is happening all the time, right? Like, we already have you guys have had your own personal experiences, and so many other people have. And like, being able to talk about it and understand the consequences that it has on the lives of people involved is so vital to actual recovery. And the fact that people are like, no, we just can't go there. We can't talk about it. And now
It's
the
still
way that they're
taboo.
shutting down, and the way that they're shutting down and attacking Milo, for example, right? Although if Lena Dunham talks about it, that's cool, but Milo
yeah,
does it,
yeah.
and it's not, right? And so just this double, this this frustration of being so judgmental for people for even
Well,
wanting
one thing.
to discuss the topic.
One thing, the Lena Dunham thing, and I think Bill Maher also advocated for something similar. Those both happened with female perpetrators.
Yeah,
So
yeah. What would it have been so different if it's like a 14-year-old boy and a 38-year-old woman? Would the depravity be as bad?
That's almost about the same age difference between me and my female abuser.
And the
I might as well
concept,
say my mother. She's the one that abused me.
that's awful.
So
Yeah,
yeah, she
that's
was
awful to
about
have the
she was in her 40s, and yeah, and I was about 12. It's about right.
and to have the person and the person who is supposed to protect you be the one who
Oh,
does it.
betrayal is bad. I mean,
Yeah.
the betrayal is. I'm still feel betrayed.
yeah.
And you
Just
bring
get
up
over
betrayal
it.
because even HH, when he confronts Lolita at the end, he says, "You betrayed me," and she's like, "I betrayed you? Like, are you kidding? Like,
Right.
are you
True.
really like you're gonna say that? Like, because I tried to get away from you, I betrayed you? Are you kidding me?" And it's just but they see it as
The
happening to
disconnect was so
them.
loud.
Yeah.
The disconnect was so loud in that book. It really was.
Yeah.
Well, I really want to thank you guys for being a part of the stream with me. I thought that this was, especially with all of everything that is going on and the topics that we're having in the media, I thought it was very relevant. I highly recommend this book to people. I recommend even the movie. Just because the topic makes you uncomfortable doesn't mean that it's not important to investigate.
Discuss.
And so just to finish off, I want to bring it back to the quote that I kind of started with. And so I'm kind of fully ripping off. I've been ripping off Sparks' notes for the most part. But in the important quotes, they bring this up where they say Lolita should make all of us parents, social workers, educators apply ourselves with greater vigilance and bring the task of bringing better generations to a safer world. So this is what Sparks Notes' explanation is, and I thought it was very interesting. They say this quotation from the end of the fake forward of Lolita by John Ray Jr., which is a PhD, sounds like a serious pro announcement. However, by the time the reader has finished the novel, its assessment sounds patently ridiculous. As the editor of psychology books, Ray is understandably attached to the notion that psychology can shed an illuminating light on Lolita, and that the novel might become a notable book in psychiatric circles. However, Nabokov, is that how you pronounce it?
Um, Nabokov sounds like what it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would go with Nabokov.
So, however, Nabokov, an outspoken critic of psychology, writes to Lolita from a romantic point of view, portraying Humbert's impulses as emotional and artistic rather than psychological and scientific. Themes such as love and lust were, for Nabokov, greater than the sum of the scientific explanations. As a result, Ray's attempt to assert Lolita as some sort of social significance is comical in the indication that Nabokov intends to derail the psychological explanation of this novel in favor of a more magical or emotional one. So I think that's something to ponder on, why the author wrote this book, what he was trying to get at. I'd like to look at his other books as well to see. I mean, he's a very good writer. I have to give him that.
I would just say that I hated this book, but I'm gonna still stand by that. I fucking hate this book, but at the same time, I think it should be read because it does portray really of the different characters of abuse.
And again, and the emotional aspects of it, and
Yeah.
not trying to, explain the scientific, like even us throughout the book, we're trying to, target it. Was it abuse at childhood? What causes this? Like we're trying to, reduce it.
In the
And
end, it doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter. Like these
Right.
things, this happen, and it has influences, and how do people live with it and go on? And I think this book really, really does portray that beautifully. So that's it for me. Thank you guys so much for joining this. I know this was a hard book for both of you, and I hope reading it actually did kind of help in one way or another, um, to help the recovery process for anyone who has kind of been through something like this.
Thank you. Only time will tell.
Yeah.
Can I just say one more thing?
Of course.
Until this taboo about child abuse is taken away and shed light on, we're going to keep on having these problems.
Yeah,
We're
they
going to
don't
keep on
seem to
having
be
these
going anywhere.
disconnects. We got to get rid of the taboo. We got to start addressing the problem as it is.
The
And
taboo
then-
of talking about it is
Yeah.
what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, the taboo of addressing the issue, not the taboo of allowing pedophiles to.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
So that's all I have to say.
And
Thank you,
you
Siggy.
know what? And yeah, and I think all of this, the way that they've attacked Milo hasn't made anything better for any victim of.
It's not fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
it's
so
going
unfair. It's not even right.
They're on to George Takei now because George Takei mentioned something
Yep.
of the sort, and I think they're compiling a list of all the other people who said they've had similar instances.
They are.
the
That's what it
list
seems like.
is getting significantly bigger, and
Yeah.
we're just going to have to wait and see where the hell all of this goes.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
right that just because Milo is from right wing and George Takei is left wing, it's not fair that
Exactly.
to latch
It's not-
onto either of them.
Exactly. It's not unfair to criticize his story and how he felt. That was his way of dealing with the abuse, and it's so
Exactly.
unfair. It pisses me off.
Yeah, but I don't
People
want
are so petty.
the
Yeah,
I just don't want
they're so
people.
petty because of parties. Sorry, lady. I keep on trumping
Yeah,
on
it's
you.
okay. I just
But it's
wanted to
just-
say that I don't.
Go ahead.
I don't want Milo fans to now, attack George Takei or anyone else, because that is
Yeah,
not fair either. It's not
Yeah,
an
it's not
ideological war. It has nothing to do with politics, except maybe
Exactly.
they're pedophile politicians, maybe.
You basically said what I was going to say, lady, so that was perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, it comes down to that. I really feel it's so fucking unfair. It's just unbelievable that people will snoop to that level to play politics to actually drag someone through the mud because of what they said about their abuse.
Right, and about his own abuse and how, like, he even says in his press conference, like, pretty much like, "Fuck you for telling me how I talk about my own experiences."
I support Milo 100%.
Yeah, I mean, and if they're gonna, and a lot of like, and so I would like people, if they did read the book, or even if you haven't, go look at some of the debates about Lolita. And this is this book touches on this very debate, all these things that this Milo incidents, all these conversations that has sparked. The reviews, they talk about whether she's a victim or an instigator. All of these things are there. So all these themes in the book are very real to so many people. And I urge people to really take the time to really understand it. If you want to be judgmental about it, if you want to decide that you get to judge people based on their experiences, at least take the time to really understand it. And I also want to say, despite the despicable character that HH is, he is in pain and torture throughout the entire book. Like, there's nothing about his existence that is happy and enjoyable. It's just constant fear and anxiety and obsession and fear of loss. Like, this isn't a person who's living the life. You could say that about Quilty's character, being a celebrity and using his celebrity to manipulate people and throw parties and create pornography. He actually films pornography and stuff like that too. But with his character, this is a person who is very tortured and is suffering pretty much from the age of 13. So this is not glorifying any pedophile or accepting anything or making it seem like it's a wonderful way to be living at all. It's in fact the opposite of that, which is another reason that I do highly recommend the book. Okay, it's 4:30. We should end there.
Okay.
Okay.
Before we completely run away, would you like to let people know what's the next book we're reading?
We are going to announce the next book, but I just want to confirm with everyone because I am debating on whether we should read Elephants on Acid or maybe we should read The Art of the Deal. And talk about that one since we have people who are interested in it. So we will make an announcement pretty soon, but either it will be Elephants on Acid or The Art of the Deal, or maybe both at some
Elephants.
point. Yeah, I mean, Elephants on Acid is really interesting. So it's a book about
It's really
really bizarre.
too, full of jokes.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a difficult read. It's going to be an enjoyable read. I have read most of that
maybe
book
we should go
myself.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah, we need it.
And if you guys haven't caught it, book Art of the Deal is the book that Trump wrote, the one he's
Oh, yeah.
most famous for. So that might also be a really lighthearted, fun read.
Let's do Elephants on Acid, away from politics.
Okay, maybe. Okay. Yeah, fine. So next book is Elephants on Acid. It's a book of bizarre experiments. I will ask you guys to pick. I was gonna assign homework for that, so I want everyone to pick which one was their favorite experiment from the book. So while you're reading it, keep in mind which one you like the most.
And since Elephants on Acid is my pick, I will try and provide a PDF or something inside the book
Loki,
club
I can,
chat.
if you
Oh,
want.
Lady
You
Back.
already found it?
I got it. Yeah.
Excellent,
I just.
excellent.
Okay, great. Okay, see you guys in 2 weeks.
All right, thank you
Bye-bye.
for joining us.
All
I
right.
hope you guys enjoyed this. We definitely, or at least some of us, put our hearts into it. All right, have a good night. Bye.